Okay, so welcome to the Redesigning School Counseling webinar for first-year schools. And this webinar is being attended by schools from across the country, North Carolina, Kentucky, Texas. So my name is Sue Reynolds. I'm the Executive Director of the American Student Achievement Institute, and we also have Chris Avona with us from our organization. And the schools that are participating with us today are interested in creating a school counseling program that's linked to student achievement. But this process will also enable those schools to become eligible for the Ask a Ramp Award. Our format will be very informal today. We'll ask questions and have discussion as we go. So here's today's agenda. We'll spend some time catching up. I know that since we're just newly doing this nationally, some of you did not even learn about this until the ASCA conference last summer, and so you didn't have an opportunity to do the spring and summer tasks. And when we talked about how it would be possible to catch up with that early in the school year. So we'll talk about catching up on those things. Then we'll do a review of terminology that we introduced last spring in our first meeting, but especially for the people who are just joining us for the first time, we'll go over that terminology a little bit. And then specifically, we want to focus on the task for this month. So each month, each webinar will focus on a specific task. We'll walk through exactly how to do it, answer any questions that you have, and then after the webinar, you'll go to, in your schools and complete that task. When we come back for our September webinar, you all will report out about how that task went and share successes, share challenges, help each other as we go through each month. So our first task in Redesigning School Counseling is to recruit your advisory council members. We'll give you lots of resources today on how to do that and tips for how to get a really good advisory council that can give you sound and good input and feedback as you do your activities. We'll also look at the online manual for RSC and the online system and show you specifically where to input the advisory council roster. Okay, so let's look at the catch-up part first. There were several tasks that we had hoped that schools would do over the spring and the summer. However, we used to not start the process until August, and we know it's very possible. We've had, probably 70 schools that have started this in August and finished on time. So not to worry if you're just getting started. So the first thing we want to look at is the student survey. The student survey window was March 15th to June 15th, and that's the window that will be open every year. What we're going to do, for those of you who haven't surveyed your students yet, is we're going to open this survey again for 1 week in September. So here's how that will work. At our next webinar, which is on September 3rd, the webinars are always the first Tuesday of each month. At our webinar on September 3rd, I'll give you instructions for how to set up the survey and really how to make it happen. Then, during the first week of September, we'd like you to set up the survey. That's something that a counselor does. It takes about 5 minutes. Basically, you're deciding which survey questions you would like to be on the survey. There are some survey question sets that are optional. Although if you're doing a ramp, you're going to want to use all of the survey questions. And then you just set up the survey. You just say, I want this set, I want that set of questions, I want this set of questions, and that customizes your survey for you. So we'll do that after the webinar in September and in the first, and then you'll complete that task in the first week of September. Then we'll make the survey live again only for you guys for 1 week. So September 9th to 13th is the week that your students will survey. And it's very, very important that when your students survey, they survey for the grade that they were in last year. So we're actually opening the 2012-2013 school year survey So we need the students to take the survey for the grade level that they were in last year. And that means that your youngest grade does not survey because last year they were not in your building. So we'd like all of the students in your school to survey, except for the youngest grade level. Then what you need to do right now is to think about and make arrangements for getting all of your students, except for the youngest grade level, to a computer during the second week of September to survey. I wish that Jacob could have stayed with us on the webinar. He surveyed hundreds of students last spring, and I was looking forward to his tips on how to do that. A lot of schools do is they'll say to their teachers, in that week, sometime in those 5 days, can you survey your students during your third period class? And that way every teacher takes half an hour out of their curriculum, and the whole school gives the survey. Other schools will survey during an activity period or during English classes. So just get creative. We've had 180 schools in Indiana that have surveyed every student in their building, and their time challenges are no different than yours. So get creative and think about how can we get all of our kids to computers to take that survey. Survey takes about a half an hour to do. So right now, all you need to do is worry about how you're going to get your kids to the computers. And then when we meet again on September 3rd, we'll give you all the instructions for how to get everything set up and make sure that the survey is ready for the kids. Okay, then another task that we need you to start doing is the counselor time use study. And basically, this is a time task log. You probably have done them for different graduate courses or maybe for your professional associations. But the log looks like that. And basically, you can see that there's the 5 days of the week, and then the time is broken down into 20-minute segments. You can see that there's a code across the top of the page, so the G for guidance if it's a guidance activity, C for counseling, A for advocacy, and management, or N if it's non-pro. And then just definitions. Guidance activities are activities that help students master the guidance standards, and as a result of mastering those standards, make better decisions, sound decisions in areas that impact achievement. Counseling are activities that not all students do, but some students participate in, that helps those students address concerns that they have, or social concerns, or personal concerns that are interfering with learning. Then there's advocacy. Those activities are activities that school counselors do that promote systemic change, to develop an environment that supports learning, or to promote the needs of an individual student. So like when you're in an annual case review representing the needs of the students, you would be doing an advocacy activity. And then management are all the behind-the-scenes things that counselors have to do, that counselors do to make their school counseling program run. So here are some examples of management activities: program development, professional or personal development. What we're doing right now is a management activity, professional development, networking with other people in your school and your community, and evaluating your school counseling programs. Those are all management activities that you have to do to make sure that you have a sound school counseling program. And then the fifth kind of activity is not actually part of the school counseling program, but it is an activity that counselors spend a lot of their time, some counselors spend a lot of their time doing, so we want to be able to log that, and that is activities that we call non-program activities. And those are activities that do not help students master the guidance standards or address a personal or social problem that's interfering with learning. So anytime a counselor is participating in an activity that doesn't do one of those two things, it's a non-program activity, and it's not really part of the school counseling program. Here are some common non-program activities that counselors do. Administration of different programs. They're really kind of junior principals in that administrative task. Record keeping, where school counselors are being used as registrars. There's other activities, scheduling, master scheduling, balancing class loads, and then other just tasks like substitute teaching or designing awards programs, planning graduation, taking care of discipline. There's just a ton of activities that some counselors are asked to do that have nothing to do with guidance or counseling. And we want to capture those activities in the logs because later in this process, we want your advisory council to have a discussion about how counselors are being used in the building. So we want the data to drive that discussion. So all we're going to do is put the data out there and then let the advisory council decide if they think that that use is appropriate or not and what changes they're going to make in use, time use, if they think that the time use is not appropriate. So, okay. Then, as you're filling out your time task log, I just want to go over a couple of things here. So this actually was one of my time task logs, and you can see that on Monday morning, let me find my cursor here so I can point. On Monday morning, on this day, I started developing some 8th grade forms. So that was a management task. So I put the little note in there of what I was doing, and then management. And then on this day, I think I was probably talking with kids. These were little 20-minute appointments. These were probably schedule change appointments. This happened in January. So I was doing some academic advising with students who wanted to come in to talk about dropping one course and taking another course. So we put that in and then put the G for guidance. Then at 10:20, these are not real names, by the way, Joan came in and started talking to me about a guidance activity, but in the middle of this appointment, she brought up a counseling need. So maybe she was having a difficulty at home, or something was going on, depression, or something was going on that I needed to follow up with her. And actually I see I had the names wrong here. I meant to carry the same name all the way through. This should have been Julie Sang. So at any rate, so Julie came back the next day for a longer appointment, and I touched base with her to talk about the counseling. And then you see then I decided we needed more time, and we came in for a full hour meeting on Wednesday and then a 40-minute meeting on Thursday. So what started out as a guidance appointment turned into a counseling appointment, and then we followed up with that. Here's an advisory group. So here's classroom guidance or a teacher advisor program that got logged in as a guidance activity. And then here's a meeting that we did with a parent. This was a consultation meeting, so I was using the consultation part of counseling. And then here's one where we were just printing honor rolls, and that was a non-program because that had nothing, that did not help students master guidance indicator, and it was not helping students overcome a personal or social problem, so it was not part of the school counseling program. But somebody had to do it, and the principal asked us to do it, and so we have to do it. Okay, so I also want to show you at the bottom of the time task log, there are places where at the end of the week you tally up how many boxes that you have of each kind, and then you can figure out the percentage of the time use. One other thing we wanted to point out is we took a marker and made a heavy line at the place where our contract time ended. And you can see that in this time after school was out, which when we were not under contract, we did a lot of management activities, and we did a lot of advocacy activities outside of the contract time. That allowed us, because we were doing that management activity outside of contract time, that allowed us to spend more time when kids were there with kids and parents. But we were suggesting that you keep track of how many outside of contract boxes you have. Some counselors are okay with spending tons of hours outside of contract time, and that's fine. Other counselors think, maybe 2 hours a day outside of contract time, because that's may be equivalent to the amount of time that teachers spend grading papers. But we just want that to be part of the discussion later. So if you'll keep track of that, that would be good too. Okay. Then online we also have an electronic time task log. And if you do the electronic one, it does all the tallying for you. So I'll show you where to get that when we get to the online system. Okay, and then here's the rubric that in order to earn the Ask a Ramp Award and to meet our standards, you'll need to submit one time task log for each counselor for the first semester and one for each counselor for the second semester. But you'll be doing this all year long, keeping this data, because when we get to the 5th meeting of the Advisory Council, we're going to bring all that data back and discuss it. So, okay, let's just do a quick pause there. Chris, do we have any hands up, any questions about time task log?
We don't, but I'd like to test Sharon Bay and see if we can talk to her. It looks like she still might have herself muted.
Okay. Again, Sharon, just enter the audio code, audio pin there into your phone. It's the # audio pin, then pound, and we should be able to unmute you.
Now she looks fine. Sharon, can you hear us? Oh.
Okay, we'll have to talk to Sharon afterwards and figure out why that didn't work for her. Okay, let's talk about the self-studies. That was these just need to be done sometime during the school year. We had suggested to the counselors that they do it last summer just to kind of get out of the way. But there are 4 self-studies. There's a program self-study, a counselor self-study, resources self-study, and a school demographics self-study. So this is what the self-studies look like. You just kind of fill them out and then upload them. The one thing on human resources, on the resources self-study, omit the human resources right now. You're going to be able to come in later and put that actual data from your time task logs in there. And right now we don't have that data to put in, so omit the human resources on the resource self-study. Also omit the perceptions of the school counselors. That's going to come from your survey, and you'll be able to put that data in there later. You can do the rest of the resources self-study, so that you've got to kind of have a baseline of where you are. But those 2 areas will be able to put data in after you collect it. These are the rubric items for the self-studies, and basically it's just that you've done them. Okay, so that's kind of the catch-up work. The survey and the self-studies and the time task logs that you'll start right away. All of your counselors in your building will do the time task logs so that we can pull that data together later. Okay, then let's just review a little bit. These are things that we talked about either when you heard us at the ASCA conference or in the webinar that we did last spring with some of you. So terminology, I just already went through these terms, so just kind of fly through those. Okay, our beliefs. We believe in all of RSC is based on this. So this is kind of different. We've been working with student data and transforming, redesigning school counseling since the early, mid-1980s. And we've really matured in our thinking about school counseling and the impact of school counseling. So we believe that school counseling programs help students make sound choices in areas that impact academic success. So the link between school counseling and academic success is that counselors help kids make good choices. I think that the data that we talked about earlier that showed that schools that participated in RSC had higher achievement, my guess is that this is why. It's because those kids were making better choices in areas that impact achievement. This is what we call the school counseling pyramid. We'll come back to this probably at every webinar. Basically, our thinking is, again, it's just a different way of saying that when students are participating in sound guidance and counseling programs, they make better choices, and then as a result of that, achievement goes up. Then, excuse me, when we're designing your school counseling program this year, we're going to take this pyramid and we're just going to work it backwards. Excuse me. We're going to start with achievement. We'll look at what are your school's achievement goals. So we'll get those out of your school improvement plan. And then we'll ask, okay, in order for our school to reach those goals, what choices do kids need to make? Do they need to turn in their homework, ask for extra help, submit a FAFSA, learn how to be assertive rather than aggressive, deal with bullying issues? What are the choices that kids need to make? Once we have those choices defined, then we'll look at, okay, what does our guidance and counseling program need to look like in order to help kids make those choices? So the big thing is those student choices. That's where we'll collect a lot of data. The survey is collecting a lot of data around those student choices. And then we'll look, a year from now, 2 years from now, did your school counseling activities make an impact on those choices? Okay, let me pause again. Chris, any questions so far?
No.
Okay, then the process. So what we've done last spring and this summer, and some of you are playing catch-up on, is getting ready. You've put together your steering team, and if you haven't done it already, you will soon be collecting data, completing your self-studies, and today we're talking about that last part of getting ready, which is putting together your advisory council. Okay, so in September, next month, at the beginning of the month, we'll have another webinar, and at that webinar, we'll talk about how do you introduce your advisory council to RSC. And then your homework for that time will be to go and have that advisory council and introduce them to RSC. Then in October, your advisory council will create a vision statement, kind of their ideal state, so that we're all on the same page, moving in the same direction. Then in November, we'll bring your advisory council all of your data, and we'll help them define what choices they think students need to make in order to be successful at school. They'll come up with maybe 70 or 80 different choices in a typical middle school or high school or elementary school. And then at the next meeting, we'll talk about how it's not possible for the school counselors to focus on 70 or 80 things all at the same time. And we'll talk with the advisory council about how much time and energy you have, how much funding you have, and then we'll ask the advisory council to help you set priority goals. So a priority goal may just be one goal. It's just one thing that you're really going to work with your school counseling program to impact. In my school counseling program, our first goal was that we wanted kids to choose to enroll in algebra. This was back in the early 80s when few students were enrolling in algebra. But that's the only goal we had for our department. Let's design a school counseling program that would help kids want to enroll in algebra. And so it could be just one priority goal, 2, 3. We usually recommend that schools not do more than 2 or 3 because we really want you to focus and spend time on those priority goals in a way that will make that data move. So then in February, we'll come back with another set of data also from the survey that says that will help you figure out why kids aren't making the targeted choices that you want them to make. So it might be that they don't have the knowledge that they need, and then you've got a guidance issue. Or maybe they have personal social problems that are interfering with their ability to be productive at school, and then it's a counseling issue. Or it might be that they have the knowledge and they don't have any personal or social problems, but you're not giving them the opportunities. So we'll start looking at typical opportunities that students have in a sound guidance, sound school counseling program, and then we'll help, again with the survey data, we'll help you to determine if you're giving the kids those opportunities or not. Sometimes schools think kids have the opportunities, but the data will show that the kids aren't taking advantage of those opportunities. So, so we'll look at all that data again, really figure out why aren't kids making the choices that you want them to make. Once we know the why, then we can figure out what to do about it. So whatever the why is, if they don't have the opportunities, then we'll design activities that will give them those opportunities. If they have personal or social problems, then we'll design activities that will help them overcome those personal or social problems. So the activities will be really focused on the root causes. And then finally, after March, in April and May, the advisory council's work will be finished, but your work will continue as you prepare to implement those activities in the coming school year. So we'll come up with a program calendar and a budget and guidance lessons and just the things that we need to do to make sure that those activities are completed and completed well. So that's the process. Let me pause one more time. Chris, any hands up?
No hands up.
Any questions?
We were still trying to talk to Sharon. She said she can see the PowerPoints. She does have her hand up. Okay, so I will unmute her, and we will try to talk. Okay. Sharon, can you hear us?
Oh, it's coming up on the screen that she's talking. I don't know. Sharon, say something so we can check that out one more time. No, now it's not. Okay, probably what we'll need to do, Chris, is we'll do a little test webinar and set that up with Sharon and figure out why we can't hear her. Okay. So, sorry about that, Sharon. I don't know what's going on there. So,
okay. Yes, she's writing her questions out, and she says we are talking. So I just told her if she had any questions for you that she could just
type them to you.
Type them in, and I'll read them to her.
Perfect. Perfect. Okay. So now let's talk about this month's task. This is really, in terms of how important it is, this is one of the most important tasks. Your work all year long the quality of your work all year long will be based on the quality of your advisory council. So let's figure out how to put together a good advisory council. First question is, why bother to do this? Why not just design your own school counseling program? I mean, after all, you're the ones who have the credentials as a school counselor. Why bother to convene the advisory council? Well, first of all, we want to make sure that your advisory council mirrors your community. Before I used an advisory council, I loved my advisory council. But before I used an advisory council, all of the decisions for my program were based on the perspectives of a white middle-class female, me. And when I put the advisory council together, then we had the different perspectives of different groups. I had at the table people that were parents of free and reduced lunch kids, parents of one of our dropouts who agreed to be on our advisory council. So when you look at your council, you want to make sure that it mirrors the makeup of your community. So it makes up your racial makeup, your ethnicity makeup, your economic level makeup, gender, and then also, especially if you're in a rural school, your geographic makeup. Rural schools that have consolidated, even if that happened 30 years ago, there's still communities that are kind of distinct, and we want to make sure that each of those communities is involved in your advisory council. Even if you're in an urban school and when you're recruiting parents, you might want to make sure that if you're in a middle school, that you're recruiting parents from the different feeder schools who are now middle school parents. But so you really have a geographic distribution as well. Okay, so be thinking about that. Your advisory council should look like your community. Then the other thing you want to think about strategically in terms of who you're bringing to the table is, are you bringing people to the table that have the ability to allocate resources? The biggest resource, in my opinion, more important than anything, is the resource of time. And your principal has the ability to allocate time at teacher meetings, your time. So having one of your key building administrators on your advisory council would be really, really good. And also someone who has the ability to allocate funding. A lot of schools have been able to tap into funding through their community foundation. So having someone from a community foundation or businesses that make a lot of community donations, that would be great. Also be thinking about who has access to kids. That may be people like the clergy or youth service organizations, like Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts. So So who has access to kids and who has access to parents? So if you've got a PTA, it might be good to have a PTA rep on your advisory council. If there's a band boosters group, having a rep from that group on your advisory council. Later, if these folks engage, like I know they will, a lot of your guidance activities they can support through their own activities, or maybe even take that off of your shoulders and they would sponsor an activity on your behalf. So getting folks that have access to kids is really going to be good down the road. You also want to make sure that you've got some folks that have key knowledge, especially folks that have knowledge of global economics. So if you've got an economic development council, that would be a great person to get on your council, or somebody who's in charge of human resources at a large business would be good also. And then number 4, I kind of mentioned already, you can be thinking about, who can provide guidance lessons besides you. For example, if you're in a high school and you have a family and consumer science program, part of their national curriculum is career development. And if you can incorporate your career development agenda or lesson plans into family and consumer science, that would be great. Or your health teachers in a middle school, that would be wonderful. So just kind of think strategically about who you're inviting to be on your advisory council. One thing that's important to remember is that while your steering team are worker bees, your steering team is, every member of your steering team will have homework to do and responsibilities. Your advisory council are not worker bees. They are thinker bees. So they'll attend 5 meetings and help you think. They're not going to have any homework between meetings. There may be one time where we ask them to look at data before they come to a meeting. But they're just there to think and to talk to you and give you ideas. They're not worker bees. So here's a typical advisory council makeup. Usually if you've got all the stakeholders in place, you're looking at 20 to 30 people. We'll give you lots of tools to help bring 20 to 30 people to consensus and to facilitate discussions with them. So from the school, teachers representing all grade levels or all subjects, and all subjects, students at different grade levels, and all different kinds of students, high ability students, general ed students, special ed students, college prep students, career and tech ed, vocational students. You really want all different kinds of students to be there. And then counselors, your administrators, representatives from your feeder schools, representatives from your receiving schools. And then from the community, parents, all different kinds of parents and parents that reflect the makeup of the community, economic development, business, community foundations, media. Media is really good because if they understand what you're doing, you'll get a lot of positive press, which your principal will like. Youth service organizations, faith-based organizations, service clubs. They too, in my own practice, we had a lot of our service clubs adopt part of the guidance curriculum and do it for me. So I got to give up some of the time that I had been spending doing those things. They did it on my behalf. Your public library, your school library, I should have had that on the left side. Agencies, local government. So we really want everybody to be at the table to make this as rich of a discussion as possible. So economic development, I think just about every county in the country has an economic development group. A lot of cities have economic development groups, so you tap into those. If you, excuse me, if you're recruiting a business rep, I try to get that to be a higher level person who's responsible for human resources. They will be very interested in developing your students as a resource. Just like they develop their material resources, businesses are very interested in developing human resources. Businesses usually jump at the opportunity to come advise the school, and I think you'll have no problems doing that. I'd stay away from, though, in the beginning of doing this work, people would bring in like a bank teller. And yes, that's a business, but the bank teller has such limited access to information about global economics and hiring practices and They're wonderful people, and absolutely would be great to have on your advisory council. But we're really looking for a business rep who's responsible for human resources. The person who's thinking about what are our employees going to look like 10 years from now, and how do I build that resource. So, okay, community foundations have access to funding and can connect you with folks that have funding down the road. And our experience has been just incredibly positive with community foundations. They love this work. The community foundations don't have time to do the program development, but they do have the funding to support people who are doing program development. So I would strongly suggest a community foundation person on your advisory council. Service clubs. All of these clubs that are on the screen right now, Optimist, Lions, Rotary, Kiwanis, all of these clubs have in their mission statement language about supporting the community's youth. So this would be part of their mission to support your work. So those are groups that I'd invite to send a representative as well. One of the questions we often get in the two schools in Nicholasville, this may come up for you. We often get, if there's more than one school in a district that's participating, do you each need to have a council of your own? And the answer is yes, because when we're looking at the data of the two schools will be different, and then also the politics in each building is different. The resistance that you'll get in each building will be slightly different. So we want an advisory council to be looking at each of the schools individually. It is possible to combine two advisory councils for a presentation and then split into two different groups before the discussion, so that you're each discussing your own school. That can save you a little bit of time. So, okay. So the responsibilities of the advisory council, one is to have, actually it's 5 meetings, we've adjusted that, 5 meetings, and the meetings last 2 hours each, and they provide you with input, and after you do activities, then they provide you with feedback. Then the cool thing is that after you get going and these folks understand you and your process and kids' needs and what you have the ability to accomplish, they will become the biggest advocates for school counseling programs. They will become your voice in the community, to your school board, to your principal. In my own school, we were looking at, the school board was looking at riffing one of our counselors, and it was our advisory council that went to the school board and said, you're not riffing a position, you're riffing a program, and that's not acceptable to us. And our school board decided not to riff. We just heard from a school this morning, a renewal school in Indiana, who their advisory council went to the school board and their administration. They ended up hiring another counselor and a school counseling secretary. So they can really be a voice for you. And then the other thing is, down the road, this won't happen right in the beginning, but down the road, the light bulb will go off that they can help you. So in my practice, for example, one of my guidance indicators was that students would master interviewing skills. And our local Chamber of Commerce said, why don't we come in and teach the kids how to interview? We can do that. So I didn't have to do that anymore. The community would do that. So those are their responsibilities. In the beginning, it's just attending meetings and giving you feedback at the meeting, no homework. But down the road, we think these other things will evolve. Okay, let's pause here, take questions. Chris, no questions?
No, I see no questions.
Okay, that sounds good. So this month's submissions, one of the things that you'll be turning in or putting online is the advisory council. And in order to make sure that you are RAMP compliant, as well as just being good practice, we want to make sure that your advisory council has representatives of students, teachers, parents, business, and community organizations. And then we also want to make sure that the roster includes, and this is just to make it easier for you to communicate with your advisory council, their names, phone numbers, email addresses. And then also their perspectives. In other words, I'm on the advisory council, I have the perspective of a third grade parent, or I have the perspective of a free and reduced parent, or whatever. And each person on your advisory council will come up with their own perspective. And we'll enter that into your roster after your first advisory council meeting. Then also in this month, we're suggesting that you complete the narrative questions. I'll show you where those are online. There's several of them. And this is where if you have more than one person on your steering team, you might delegate tasks here and have one person kind of coordinate getting the advisory council on board and another person look at getting all the narrative questions. A lot of the narrative questions are from Ask Us specifically, and if they involve process, we have completed the answer to that question for you based on our process, but you do need to read the answer and make sure that it's what you've done in what you plan to do in your school and adjust it as you need to. Since we know the process, we thought we'd just save you some time by answering those process questions for you. And then finally, your time task log, I mentioned those already. Okay, so the manual, let's look at that. I'm going to show you online how to get there in a second, but I wanted to look at the tools that you have available. So in the manual, there's a section that says Advisory Council Recruitment, and you've got 4 tools. The first one is a list of typical stakeholder groups that are in your community. So we suggest that as a first step, you circle the stakeholder groups that you find in your community. So the first one is students representing different grade levels. Do you have that in your community? Well, of course. So you'd circle that one. So circle all the stakeholder groups. And then second step, fill in the names of the people that you're going to recruit from those stakeholder groups to be on your advisory council. That'll really help you, this activity will really help you get a broad, thoughtful advisory council. Then we also are providing you with talking points, what to say when you first call somebody to invite them to be on your advisory council. So you've got talking points. And then after they say yes, we've given you a letter that you can just cut and paste onto your letterhead. And again, just edit anything. We just tried to save you some time here. You can use the letter exactly the way it is or edit. Okay, and we're kind of a little running out of time, so I want to make sure that, yep, the last thing to do is to look online real quickly. So I am logged in as Sharp Middle School in Kentucky. That was Jacob's school. And there's a couple things that are really, really key. For almost all of your work, and maybe all of your work, all you really need is these 3 blue keys. So just focus on those 3 blue keys. The rest of the keys are just shortcuts to different things. But personally, I never use any of those other keys. I use just these 3 blue ones. First thing you want to make sure you do, and I've noticed when I checked, a couple of you have not done this yet. You want to click on the RSC uses, and in there, make sure that first year process has a check in it. And then in program recognition, does your school have ask a ramp status? No. Are you seeking ramp status? Yes. And when do you anticipate submitting your school counseling program portfolio? For you guys, it would be 2014. So just make sure you have that date in there. There's a drop down of different years. And then the Indiana Gold Star, don't worry about, and actually this will disappear. Our programmers have it on their to-do list that this will come off of a school outside of Indiana's site. Okay, so just make sure you do that. That customizes your website. Then I'm going to jump down the manual. And on the manual, because I've customized my website, the first year manual comes up on top. Next year, when you renew, the renewal manual will come up, but you want first year. And if you scroll down, here's the advisory council recruitment that we looked at. If you click on these links, those documents will pop up. And one other thing while we're here, I wanted to bring to your attention is that if you need graduate credit for some reason, it's possible to earn 3 graduate credits for this work. They're awarded from Indiana University, and the course title is School Reform. And you won't need the Indiana PGPs. So, okay. So if you want that graduate credit, give us a call, and we'll follow up in doing that for you. And then the tab that you'll work with the most is the Process tab. So you just click on the Process tab. The very first things in each month are webcasts that kind of explain what we're doing in that month. So there's getting organized, there's your data collection, there's your self-studies, and then here's this month's Building Your Advisory Council. So actually the webinar that we're doing right now, or we have another one following this one that's an intro webinar as well. One of these 2 webinars will be linked right here so that you can open this up and see about the, watch the webinar that will teach you about that month's activities. So the task for this month, enter the Advisory Council roster. I'm going to click Enter, and this will look very similar to the how you entered your steering team member names. You're just going to click Enter and then add a new person, and you just enter the person's information, leave perspective blank for right now, and then hit Save. So that's that. I'm just going to hit the back button. And then the other thing on this page that I wanted to point out is it's also possible to come up with an email list for all of your advisory council members. So just click Report, and all of your advisory council members' email addresses with commas between them will come up. Or there's a thing you can click that if your email likes semicolons instead of commas, you can click a thing and it'll change it from commas to semicolons. So, okay, so that's how to enter the steering team members. I'm going to go back to the Process tab. And I said steering team, I meant Advisory Council. And then here's the rubric for Advisory Council. So again, just to make sure that if you're interested in doing the Ask a Ramp Award, make sure that you're clicking the rubric and checking the rubric that we know the Ask a Review team will be using. Okay, then I also wanted to show you, in the narrative questions. Let me find real quickly. Yeah, actually, the PowerPoint was wrong. We're not going to do the narrative questions until May, until you've got your program designed. So forget about the narrative questions. All you need to do this week or this month is just get that advisory council in. Okay, so that's kind of it. Big task for this month, and it's no simple task. I mean, again, delegate tasks. If you've got 30 people identified that you would like to be on your advisory council, and you've got 4 steering team members, split it up so that not all of the work falls on one person. The other bit of advice I'd give you is not to get behind. It's like okay if you get 1 month behind, but if you get 2 months behind, it is really hard to catch up. The other thing that happens if you get behind is that the webinars then are not covering content that you need that month. We purposefully have the webinars the first Tuesday of every month, and then if you've scheduled your advisory council after that, then we've just done the prep for that advisory council meeting. Okay, so I think that's kind of it. Any other questions, hands up or typed in?
Sharon had a question, but I think you may have answered it, that she wanted the first task to be reviewed. But she asked that before you just went into the website information.
Okay. So Sharon, quickly, if that's not what you wanted, if we haven't answered your question, if you can type it in real quickly, we'll respond to that.
And then Kelly was asking for the exact web address.
The web address?
And I did send that to her, but you may want to.
Okay, that's a good question. I'll just type it in here so everybody's got it. It's www.asainstitute.org/CSC. And so asainstitute.org, oh, I told it the wrong one, /RSC. asainstitute.org/RSC. I did check, and I think all of you have created accounts. I didn't find any of you, yeah, every single one of you has an account. So when you go there, we'll just do that real quickly. Open up a new browser here. So www.asainstitute.org/RSC. You get, oh, it knows that I'm already logged in. Let me switch to a different browser. There's a couple things I might be helpful to know. Okay, so when you log in, it's going to take you to our front page for RSC that looks like this. And then just put in your username and password here. And if you forget your username or password, there's a note here. If you've forgotten your login information, please complete this form. So click that. That'll download a form. Your principal needs to sign it, and your principal needs to tell us who they want to have the username and password. And then just fax it to us or email attach it to us, and then we'll reset your username and password and get that to you. So that's how to get that username and password if you've forgotten it. Other questions?
Let's see. I have a question here from Sharon that says, can all counselors on the team have their own login?
No, there's only one login that's shared, and we just depend on the counselors to define who's going to do the data entry, and kind of get that coordinated at home. Good question.
Okay, and we did answer Sharon's question about the
okay.
first task, so that's good. And we don't have any more questions. Oh, here's another question from Sharon. Can you reach the manual without logging in?
No, you have to log in to get to the manual.
Okay. Can it be downloaded?
The whole manual cannot be downloaded, but document by document it can be downloaded.
Okay.
Notice that in our manual we don't use page numbers. Instead we use document numbers, and that allows us to make improvements all the time. Because we can improve one document without having to reprint the entire manual.
Okay. And I don't see any other questions from Sharon.
Okay. Well, that looks good. And again, we usually will try to end right at 1 hour. Today we went back to talk about how to catch up, so we added a little bit extra content in to talk about the survey and the time use log. So we went a little long. I apologize for that. We usually will cut off right at the hour. So with that, I think we'll end our webinar, and we're so excited to have national schools in our first national webinar series. And this is what we always like to end with. We want you to remember as you go to do this work that as a school counselor, you make a difference in the lives of young people. Thank you very much. We'll conclude the webinar, and we'll look forward to talking again with everybody in the first Tuesday in September. Very good. Thank you very much.